Ephesians chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. All right. Everybody there? Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor thy father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with thee, and thou mayest live long on the earth. And ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Several weeks ago, I preached a message on establishing authority in the home. I'm breaking the news to you now that I only got through just the first few points of that message. So we have going to extend it a little bit more today. We really focused upon the establishing authority and how important that is in the early years of the life of having children. And in that message, I laid out some key principles for parents to gain control of their children so that in the later years, training could take place. So those are the two key components as you look at raising children and having a home. Those are two key components that have to be balanced and adjusted as a child comes into the home and as they grow up and prepare to leave the home. And we discussed all of that in that message. But those three principles that we mentioned is that, first off, that authority in the home is delegated by God to parents. Parents have that responsibility, and it is given to them by God. They do not earn it. They do not acquire it. It is just there. God has placed it there with parents to run the home. And that authority must be accepted by the parents. That role that they are supposed to play in the lives of their children must be accepted, and it must be embraced. It is a responsibility that God has given parents, and there is no escaping that responsibility. You cannot delegate it to someone else. You can pull in other resources that will help you, but ultimately, you as a parent are going to give an account for how you have handled the authority that God has placed upon you in the home. The second principle that we discussed and I shared with you was that parents must establish their authority over their children very early in life. Proverbs 22:15 explains the reason why when it says, "Foolishness is bound in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction shall drive it far from him." A child is rebellious because he is born with that sin nature that we all had passed down to us from Adam. And that means that if establishing authority early in life is never achieved or it's put off, that foolishness remains bound in their heart, and it becomes stronger and stronger as it remains. Those early years are for establishing authority and rule over a child, gaining control, restraining their sinful nature. The later years in the home are there for influence, training, discipleship of the parent with their children. So parents must establish their authority over children early in life. And unfortunately, in many homes, that never gets done. It never gets done. The third principle for establishing authority in the home is that parents must consistently enforce discipline. Ecclesiastes 8:11 says, "Because sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, therefore the heart of the sons of men is fully set in them to do evil." Sentence against an evil work must be dealt with immediately. The verse explains that authority fails in many homes because it's not that they don't have rules in the home, it's not that the instructions not given or commands are not issued to a child, but it is because enforcement is uncertain and insufficient. You cannot just enforce with words. It's not established. Authority is never established just by words alone. Authority is established by consistent follow-through in enforcing behavior that you want or correcting behavior that you do not want. So, very important principles there. Today we want to kind of pick up, but those three principles are the key to establishing authority in the home. Today I want to continue on talking about enduring authority in the home. It is possible, as I mentioned, for homes never to get their authority established. And most of the time, the reason why is because they are undermining everything that they are doing. Even if you follow those three principles, you can still undermine that authority getting established. And it never really happens. There are some who are successful in establishing authority in their home, but it doesn't endure. It doesn't keep going. It may just be for a short period of time, and then things kind of break down. And so we really need to be very careful. If authority is not established and actively maintained, it will not endure throughout the time that a child is at home. And that is why the next truths, and really we're just going to get to one today, this next truth is so very important. We must understand that authority does not function in isolation. It's not something that is there and can exist in and of itself no matter what goes on around it. It is influenced greatly. It can be weakened or strengthened by other factors inside the home. And this is what happens. And that brings us to the truth that I want to share with you today. And that is that authority is undermined when parents are divided. Authority is undermined in the home when parents are divided. In Matthew chapter 12, verse 25, Christ said, "Every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand." And the word stand there means endure. So, if a kingdom is divided against itself, it's going to be desolate. Lay desolate. It's going to be wiped off the face of the earth, is what he's saying. And every city or house that is divided against itself cannot endure. It cannot keep going. It's going to fall. It's not going to be able to stand. So Christ makes this universal principle very clear, that division weakens the structure and support. That applies to nations, it applies to churches, and it certainly applies to homes, because Christ said so. A house divided against itself shall not stand. So, I want to give you several statements related to this. The first statement is this, that children instinctively look for cracks in authority. Children instinctively look for cracks or ways to get their sinful nature that they come with. They just instinctively, because of that, they are looking for cracks in authority. They want to get what they want, and they are going to work authority so that they might get it. Now, children do not understand theology like this, but they do understand leverage. They quickly observe which parent is stricter. Who is softer? Who is harder? Who is it that can be persuaded? Who do I need to avoid about this matter? If mom says no and dad says maybe, authority is no longer clear to them. It's flexible. It's movable. If dad disciplines and mom comes to the rescue, authority is weakened. Children do not have to be rebellious to sense this at all. It's just instinctive in their nature. And once a child learns that there is a division, he will naturally navigate toward the easier path, because foolishness is bound in the heart of a child. So children instinctively look for those cracks in authority. The second statement is this: God designed the home to have parental unity. God designed the home for parents to be united. Scripture consistently pairs father and mother together in instruction. Proverbs chapter 1 and verse 8 is one of those instances where it's done, where it says, "My son, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the law of thy mother." Notice it said, the instruction of the father and the law of the mother. There are two voices in the home, but there is only one message. If you could grasp that, that would be very important. Two voices, but one and the same message. God never intended the home to operate with competing authorities. The father is called to lead the home based on Ephesians 5. The mother is called to nurture and guide the home according to Titus chapter 2. But they are never presented as adversaries in Scripture. When parents contradict one another, especially in front of their children, the children learn that authority is negotiable. It's not set. We can negotiate our way to get hopefully what we want. So, children instinctively look for the cracks in authority. God designed the home for parents to be united in their effort and in their authority over their children. Statement number 3. Parental division creates strategic children. Let me explain. If a child can appeal to one parent against the other, then manipulation begins. The child is manipulating the situation. So how this may sound in real life is, what mom said I could. We've never heard that, have we? Well, dad lets me do this. Or waiting, a child waiting to ask. I've done this before when I was a kid, waiting to ask until my dad left and I asked my mom because I knew she was going to be the more likely one to say okay. So what was I doing? I was looking for that crack that I could get through to get what I wanted. And that's just how it is. But when parents are not united, children learn how this works. Now, they learn who to approach for permission, who to ask when, and how to frame questions just the right way. They're clever. They may appear compliant, but internally, they are not compliant. They are calculating, trying to get what they want. And calculation without submission always leads to rebellion later. When this works for the child even once without being corrected or called for it, the lesson is learned. Division can be used to their advantage. Now, I tried it one time. My dad was extremely good at understanding authority. Really good. And so I tried several ways and several times, and then as a small child, as a young child, but I began to learn that mom and dad are the same. Even if I snooker mom, eventually dad's gonna find out and I'm gonna pay a great price for trying to manipulate it. Many times I can remember in my mind that taking place. But dad wouldn't let it happen. But unfortunately, in many homes it does happen. Parents must understand that children do not create this division, but children expose it. And once it's exposed, they exploit it. Children feel the tension of this division instinctively. They may not understand the disagreement that may be going on, but they know that it is an unstable situation and that weakens the parent's authority. Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 32, it says, and speaking of marriage, and they two shall be one flesh. Now, one flesh is not just a physical oneness, it also includes the structural component of the home. They are to be one. One in purpose, one in direction, one in authority. A strong marriage is the foundation for having proper and biblical authority in the home. If husband and wife are not functioning as one in authority and leadership, the home will feel divided at its core. When parents are united, they eliminate these strategic moves by a child. If a child knows that mom and dad will give me the same answer, then there's no room for manipulation. It loses its power. If unity is firm, exploiting any kind of division is impossible because there is none. If unity is weak, manipulation is going to be inevitable. It's going to happen. So, parental division creates these strategic children who are very crafty at working the system. Statement number 4. Parental disagreements must be settled privately. Parental disagreements must be settled privately. Now, two people are never going to agree on the same thing all the time, even if you are married to one another and you love one another dearly. You're not always going to agree. This is just the reality of life. But any disagreement must be handled about the home and about authority and about how we're raising and about our rules. All of that needs to be handled in private, not in front of children. When a parent corrects a child and the other parent immediately jumps in trying to override that choice and decision, several things happen. Number 1, the child loses clarity as what the real rule really is. It becomes unclear, vague. The correcting parent loses credibility. And then the home becomes unstable. All because of that one issue, one choice. A wise pattern to follow is this, that if you disagree with how something was handled, support it publicly before the children, but then discuss it privately with your spouse. Now, this does not mean that you are ignoring something that's done that is wrong. You're going to deal with it, but that's not the place and time. Because dealing with it at that place and time is going to pull the support out from under your authority. You're no longer going to have any. You're going to do more damage that way than the issue that has come up. So discuss it privately. And doing so means that you are protecting the structure that supports the home. 2 voices, 1 message. We have to have that, 1 message. After the child is no longer present, you may ask and say, I think we should have handled that a little differently. That's a nice way of saying it. You can say it however you want. What are you doing? Oh, no. Why are you doing? Okay. So try that. You know, just be nice. So if you disagree, do that. But never allow the child to see you debate authority issues in real time with one another. Because once a child believes he can drive a wedge between you, you're going to see that press time and time again. So, parental disagreements must be settled privately. Statement number 5. Unity produces security. Unity of the parents produces security in the home. Children thrive under clear, united leadership. When they know that mom and dad stand together, that the rules are consistent, no matter who I ask, I'm going to get the same answer, that there is no backdoor appeal, cannot run to the other parent and try to get their way. When they know that doesn't work, they relax. They relax, and they are secure. But children in homes where the authority is divided creates a great sense of insecurity. It's as if they are hunting for the boundary, but there never is a consistent boundary there to be found. A child may seem to be enjoying getting his way through the division that exists in the home, but inwardly, that instability is producing insecurity and anxiety in the hearts of the child. And they are going to have other issues later on. But unity produces security in the home. Statement 6. The father's leadership is especially crucial. The father's leadership is especially crucial. In Scripture, the father is consistently shown as the primary spiritual leader in the home. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 6 and 7. And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children. Fathers cannot abandon, nor can they delegate their spiritual leadership responsibility. When fathers are not involved for whatever reason, mothers often have to carry that burden alone. Authority in the home becomes imbalanced, and children sense the absence of strength because the father's leadership is not there. Now, this does not diminish a mother's position of authority in the home, nor the role in the home that she plays. But you cannot have one person fulfilling both roles. It's impossible to do. God's design includes both a fatherly or male leadership and a motherly or female guidance. And where fatherly authority is weak or inconsistent, the overall authority in the home suffers. It all rides upon the father's leadership, and it is especially crucial. Statement number 7. Parental division eventually destroys a parent's influence. So important to understand. Parental division, if it continues on, eventually destroys a parent's influence on their child. When authority is unified, two voices, one message, there's one standard, the child learns that there is one standard and I have to submit to it. That's the only choice I have. But when authority is divided, the lesson changes. A child is thinking there are multiple standards. I just have to navigate them and get through them. Instead of learning submission, the child learns management. And the long-term consequences of this divided authority is that the parents lose influence over their child. Children who grow up all of their life in a divided authority home, where the parents are not on the same page, they end up navigating and managing this division. And let me describe how it looks like. The child learns to hide their behavior. When they know that one parent's going to enforce a certain rule and the other one may overlook it, or when parents don't communicate well, here's what the child learns. They learn to move their behavior into the shadows, trying to hide what they really are doing. Instead of doing something they know might be against a rule of one of the parents, they don't think about if they're going to do it. They don't think, I shouldn't do this. That's not what they're thinking. They are thinking, I shouldn't get caught doing this. Now, there's a huge difference spiritually in that way of thinking. It's a major shift because biblical authority is meant to develop the child's conscience. There's a clear right and a clear wrong. But in a divided home, that's not being built. The conscience is not being developed that way. Divided authority trains the child's character in concealment, to hide. So, a child learns to hide their behavior from any authority. You often begin to see different behavior depending on which parent is present. They are selectively honest about things, telling some things but withholding others. There's increased secrecy. So the issue is now no longer disobedience, but now it is also deception, lying, dishonesty. They learn to hide their behavior. Another characteristic as it goes on is that they learn to compartmentalize, meaning that they learn to live different lives in different situations. They live and act one way when they are with their mother, but they live and act another way when they're with their father. They live and act another way when they are with friends. And they live and act another way when they go to church. So there are all these compartments that require different types of behavior. That's how they deal with that. There is no unified standard anchoring him. Instead of one integrated life, they develop these compartments. And of course, this is very dangerous because it weakens integrity. It makes inconsistency normal, and it allows sin to exist without ever facing confrontation. And so rather than having one standard of right and wrong that applies when I'm with mom and with dad and with my friends and at church, we have multiple compartments that allows different behavior that may contradict one of the other behaviors. See what I'm saying? The child is not learning, who should I be? He is learning, who do I need to be in this situation? Another thing that develops, not only learning to hide behavior and learning to compartmentalize their life, they learn to say what each parent wants to hear. Children quickly learn the language of each parent. They figure out what dad wants emphasized. They figure out what mom wants emphasized. They figure out what answers will avoid conflict or punishment. Instead of speaking truth, they begin to speak strategically. A parent may hear, "Yes, sir," with no intention whatsoever of following through with what they have agreed to. There is agreement, but there's no conviction to do it. There may be apologies that are rehearsed and not genuine. Outwardly, it looks like respect, but inwardly, all it is just a performance. And parents end up frustrated and saying, they say all the right things, but nothing changes. The child has learned how to satisfy the parent verbally without submitting internally. The child doesn't learn submission. The child learns a passive form of rebellion. God's design is that children learn to obey because this is right. And division teaches them, I adjust my behavior depending on the situation. That's not maturity. That is adapting to the environment. And adaptation without truth always leads to hypocrisy. The child learns to speak when to speak, what to say, and how to hide. And by the time they become teenagers, they may look compliant, but they have learned how to live two separate lives. And when that happens, parents are no longer the influence that is shaping the heart of their child or developing their conscience or character. That has been lost. The teen is being influenced from outside the home by something or someone. And the parents are only hearing what the child knows that that parent wants to hear. But when parents are unified, it's a whole different ballgame. There is one standard. There is consistent accountability, and the child learns that there is no advantage in trying to hide my behavior. There is safety and security in being honest to them. So when parents are unified, the child is more likely to confess the wrongdoing that they have participated in. They're more likely to ask their parents for help and to seek their counsel and guidance. One of the clearest examples of this problem of divided leadership and authority in the home is seen in the Bible in Genesis chapter 25 with Isaac and Rebekah. Genesis chapter 25 and verse number 28. It says, "And Isaac loved Esau because he did eat of his venison. But Rebekah loved Jacob." A simple verse, but it reveals a deep problem in the home. It was not simply a difference in personality that those parents preferred. This is divided affection that led to a division in their authority and leadership. Instead of Isaac and Rebekah forming a united front, they formed separate alliances within their own home. One parent connected to and favored one child. The other parent connected to and favored the other child. There was no unified direction for the family. That is stated of them in Genesis 25, and by the time you get to Genesis chapter 27, the family is definitely not unified, but is very much fractured. In that chapter, Isaac intends to bless Esau. Rebekah overhears it, and she does not go and address it with Isaac as to who needs the blessing. She forms a plan with Jacob, her son, her favored son. And Rebekah encourages and instructs Jacob on how to deceive Isaac, his father. So we have the wife working against the clear direction of her husband. We have a son working to deceive his father. And we have a home that is operating in secrecy. That's what division in the home produces. That is the ultimate result. So, we have not just disagreement, but we have deception, as we said. Jacob did not invent that deception. In that very moment, he learned it because of the home's environment that Isaac and Rebekah had created. Jacob knew what his father valued. That venison, that meat. And that's how he was going to deceive him. He knew what his mother wanted. And even though he was fearful, she encouraged him and he went ahead and did what she wanted. He knew how to present himself accordingly. And when he goes into his father, he makes this statement, "I am Esau, thy firstborn." He speaks the words that his father expects to hear. That's key. Jacob has learned not how to be truthful, but how to be convincing. In divided homes, children learn how to adjust their words, how to present themselves differently, how to navigate authority instead of submitting to it. The result was a home of broken relationships. Because of this incident, it led to the fact that Esau hated Jacob. Now, for a parent, that's hard to take. It's hard to take when one of your children hates another of your children. And Esau wanted to kill him. Jacob had to flee the home as a result. And as far as Scripture records, Rebekah never saw Jacob again, the son she loved. Then we also see that Isaac was deceived by Jacob, and he was grieved over his family. He bore that grief the rest of his days because of his family situation. Now, all of that was the results of divided authority in the home. Their home did not just lose authority, but it lost its unity. It lost its trust, and it lost its closeness of relationship. All because that division was never addressed by Isaac and Rebekah. And when a home is divided, children stop learning truth and start learning tactics to get what they want. So yes, parental division eventually destroys a parent's influence on their child. But the opposite is true. Unity brings it together and makes it stronger. But unity does not happen automatically. It has to be intentionally cultivated in the home. And let me give you some practical steps real quick. First of all, as husband and wife, you need to agree on the mission of your home. Before you ever talk about methods and rules, you need to commit to a purpose that is the same. What are we trying to raise and develop in our children? What matters most spiritually? Unity begins with a shared direction. Amos 3:3, can two walk together except they be agreed? No, they cannot. We've got to go back to the very beginning and the very core and establish, hey, are we trying to achieve the same things? So agree on the mission of the home. Secondly, establish the non-negotiable standards. Some things that you just cannot and are not going to allow. These are core areas like obedience. Teaching a child to obey. This is very important. They must learn obedience to be able to take instruction and do it. And any variation, we've got to deal with that. Areas of respect. Respect for you as an authority. This is where teaching them to say yes sir, no sir come in. Teaching them respect for other people and for other people's property and things. Truthfulness, being honest, spiritual expectations. You got to decide what's our standard going to be when it comes to this. And you got to be on the same page. Number 3, present a united front always. This has got to be the rule. Never contradict your spouse in front of the child. Never do it. Even if you disagree, support in the moment, discuss it later in private. This helps to preserve your authority. It helps to preserve clarity is what the rule is, and it brings stability. Number 4, communicate regularly about parenting with your spouse. Most divisions in authority in the home start out unintentional. They are usually areas that have not been addressed with husband and wife. So you need to set aside time to talk about it. Talk about what is working, what is not apparently working, and how each child is responding to the ways in which you're dealing with them. Unity requires communication. But if there is silence, it creates assumptions. And assumptions always lead to division. You need to be clear and communicate. Number 5, refuse to compete for the child's favor and affection. That's one of the biggest dangers that happen, is where a parent will compete for the child's favor and affection. Trying to be the fun parent or the lenient parent or the understanding parent when they think things are too harsh or rough. This creates loyalty splits. Instead, we ought to aim for not being the favorite parent, but being a faithful parent. Number 6, strengthen the marriage relationship. Parenting unity flows out of marriage unity. A strong marriage produces stable authority. If the marriage is strained, communication weakens, respect declines, division increases, and it reflects down to children's behavior. So invest in one another in spending time together, in honest conversation, and even in prayer time together. Okay? Number 7, pray together for your children. When parents pray together, hearts align. Priorities get clarified and unity deepens. You stop fighting with each other and you start fighting for your home and for your children. And number 8, address division quickly. If you notice that you are contradicting each other, you are holding to different standards, it appears, if there's growing tension between you and how something is handled, don't ignore it. Don't ignore it. Isaac and Rebekah did not start out trying to destroy their home. They simply allowed division to go unchecked. They allowed their home to continue on without being on the same page. And over time, that division taught their children how to deceive with their behavior rather than submitting to God's standard and rule. How important this one matter is, that parents be united in raising their children and in the authority in the home. And that authority is undermined when parents are divided, going two separate ways, practicing two separate standards. It needs to be two voices, but those voices need to be speaking one voice. So very, very important. And God help us to have enduring authority in our homes. Let's pray.